and today we want to find out, is data the cure for Corona? And that's a nice and easy topic to end the day with. Obviously, I can't answer that myself, but we have smart gentlemen who are going to help me with that question. Now, obviously, they're going to introduce themselves because that makes it a little more interesting. And we'll start with you, Chris. Tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah, hi, I'm Chris. I'm Managing Director of NOVID20. In my day-to-day life before Corona, I was working as digital head at primeCROWD, which is an investors network. And with NOVID20, we are an NGO or an NPO, and we try to kill the coronavirus with our contact tracing solution.
Thank you. Gerald.
Hi, I'm Gerald Sendera. I'm Data Protection Supervisor and Legal Counsel at SBA Research, which is a research center for information security. So I have the one or another contact points with technical or data applications. So we'll have a nice talk, I think.
Thank you very much. And Patrick.
So good evening from my side. My name is Patrick. I'm working for A1 as an innovation manager. We have a startup program called A1 Startup Campus, and I'm going to tell you how we work with mobile data and what kind of use cases we found for the current COVID situation.
Thank you very much. Now, I'm interested. So obviously, the topic is data the cure for Corona? So gentlemen, is it? Let's just jump right in. Well, so is it the cure?
Well, I would say data can have different kinds of use when it comes to supporting the society, supporting the people, supporting businesses. When it comes to dealing with COVID and with its implications, and I think we have a great round of use cases here in the panel. So what we are doing, should I go into more detail on that, or?
Yeah, I mean, not too much detail, but just tell us, so how are you going to kill COVID with data? You're going to smash it with a big data hammer, or what's going to happen?
No, what we are doing is we're using mobile phone data, anonymized data, which we're providing with our network. We're working together here with a startup called Invenium. It's a spin-off from the Technical University of Graz. So it's an example of corporate startup cooperation. And together we track how the mobility was reduced after the lockdown measures imposed and what kind of impact the measures had on the mobility of the people on a country level, on a regional level. And this kind of data we provided then to the Austrian government and to the Red Cross, which are now able to base their decisions when it comes to easing the lockdown on data.
Now, I'm curious, Chris, how is that different to what you're doing?
Yeah, we're basically not tracking the people. We only have the proximity data, which means we use Bluetooth Low Energy to track the events where people meet. And there is no location-based tracking in our solution. Basically, going back to your question at the start, I think data can't be the cure itself, but I think it's very necessary for the policymakers, because you have to take the right actions, and you can't take the right actions if you don't have the right data. So from my perspective, it's very important to have data, the right data, good data, because at the beginning of this virus where we started, I saw the biggest problem in the data perspective that there was no data at all. They didn't know who is a super spreader. They didn't know where the spreading is taking place and all that stuff. And I think from this perspective, all this data connected can really be a big help for the policymakers and the decision makers.
Now, obviously, Gerald, you know I'm going to be asking you this next question, but obviously for a lot of people, just sharing data or making data accessible is a big no-no. And then again, also in Europe, it's specifically a challenge. So maybe you can kind of enlighten us here what some of the challenges are and why that's a good or bad thing.
Well, it's complicated. No.
Good.
Of course. No, the background. If not to go too deep into detail from the legal perspective, but actually, what we have in Europe is one of the strictest data protection legal systems in the world, which is obvious. I mean, everybody's heard of the General Data Protection Regulation, the GDPR. Not everybody loves it. But in a case like this, it absolutely makes sense to have such a kind of legislation in place, because when you compare the proposed solutions we have in Europe, I mean, I think just 2 days ago, or just in the last days, the German version of a Corona warning app, the CWA, has gone online live on GitHub. So you can view the source code of the German Corona tracing app, and there are several initiatives that have been developing tracing apps for the pandemic COVID, which is conveyed with COVID-19. In the rest of the world, it's not so easy to make personally identifiable data really to have a legislation which makes it which makes it easier for people to have their personally identifiable data. As we already heard from Patrick, the geolocation data, for example, or mobile phone data, which is protected by law in Europe. And this is quite unique because there are similar apps. If you look at China, for example, or South Korea, or even Singapore, where there is a completely different use of the data, because the governments obviously get access to the location data, and also what is done with the data. Even it comes down to that neighbors are informed by the government if an infection has been confirmed by the app. So there is absolutely no legal basis for the protection of the personally identifiable information. And
please. I just wanted to jump in here. So for me, like, the understanding is, from a tech point of view, it's easy, right? It can be done. It makes sense. Legal perspective, that's a bit of a different thing. How about the cultural part? And for me, as just somebody who's observing this, it seems to be the biggest challenge from a cultural point of view, because, like, I'm a tech aficionado, like, I love tech. So for me, and I have a background in market research. So for me, it's like, amazing. Let's put data in there. Let's mix it up. Let's understand where the spreaders are moving. That'll make it understandable, and therefore we can fight the virus. However, there seems to be that a lot of people are reacting and saying, don't take my data. If you take my data, you take my unborn child. So what's it?
I just to keep up with that. I give one strike for however. By the way.
Good man.
No,
however.
No, sorry. No, it's like, on the one hand, there is a hesitation if it comes down to the use of an app which can help, maybe if it's used by enough people. There are studies which say whether 60% of the population will have to use such a kind of app. Don't go into details with the techies, but it's about 60% of the population would have to use the app. And people are very hesitant, and they say, no, it's I don't want this. And on the other hand, I mean, how many people are are using social media apps? Like, I don't know, just Facebook. I'm a little bit late 70s child, so I mean, I don't even have an idea which kind of social media applications are used by the younger generation today. But if I look at Facebook, for example, I mean, how many people willingly, or Google, if you use an Android smartphone, I mean, if you don't go into the details of the operating system and really deactivate several points where data is transmitted, people are willingly giving away their personally identifiable information. It's not any problem that, I don't know, YouTube tracks which videos I watch if I'm logged into an account. My mobile phone tracks where I go jogging, or I go, I don't know, to the supermarket or whatever, and everything's there. So now we want to fight a pandemic, for example, and now it's like people say, "Ooh, I'm not sure." So
I'm not giving you my data now.
Yeah, I'm not giving away my information. No.
Now, Gerald, I understand that viewpoint. I'd be interested how, Patrick, I mean, obviously this seems to be your day-to-day business, right? How do you explain to people and say, look, we understand, but...
Exactly. So first of all, it was really great how the startups took this COVID as an opportunity. But of course, it's nothing you can do from one day to another, like to comply to GDPR, with all that kind of mobile data you're using. It's a process which we started 2 years ago when we first started with the product, which we are using also for our business customers. So it's, for example, it is used for shopping centers to tell how many people were coming on a specific date, how long were they staying, but it's never mixed with the personal information, which Gerald just mentioned, which many users are creating on YouTube, Facebook. And I think this is really important about the awareness. And I think it's important to mention and to understand that we're not talking about this personal data, but we're talking about this anonymized, aggregated data, which allow to understand really the mobility of the people in order to provide this as a basis for decision making for the government. And also, it's not only GDPR compliant, of course, but also certified by the TÜV regarding the anonymization process. So therefore, I want to emphasize more that we really know what we are doing, and also that it allows, combined with statistical data on healthcare data, to provide another model forward-looking. So I think this really provides a great opportunity in which our startup, a spin-off from a technical university with all those big data capabilities, work together with a partner who has the reputation, the credibility, who knows what we are doing in terms of GDPR, in terms of sensibility of data, and in setting this up accordingly to standards. I think this is a great example for corporate startup cooperation and how to seize opportunity in terms of a crisis.
Thank you for that. I mean, today I saw in der Standard Stop Corona App, tut nicht weh und schadet nicht. 300,000 Nutzer, sagt die Ärztekammer. So 300,000 users, but the Chamber of Doctors, or whatever you translate it, says, well, it doesn't hurt, but it doesn't harm you much. Now, Chris, I'm interested. For me as a consumer, I have the feeling there's like every week there's a new Stop Corona app, and I'm going, okay, who's next? And I have the feeling like everyone's going their own way instead of standing there together, shoulder to shoulder, and building one big thing. Why is that not as easy as I'm thinking it should be?
Yeah, that's a good question. Basically, we
thank you.
I think once a week at least. But it's really a pain in the ass to say, because in Europe, if you take a look, Germany is now starting the app. We're in a close cooperation with Gesund Zusammen, which is the pendant to NOVID. And they had the same issues like we faced at the beginning with the Stop Corona app, because we just wanted to cooperate in some way. And in the end, we did it also. And they had the same problem because they developed an app, the German app. The first German app basically is out there for 4 weeks, open source, completely compliant with each standard, but it's not used. And the offer from SAP and Deutsche Telekom then got accepted, and they built the app. So basically there was one before, and that's happening over and over again in each country. So basically, if you take a look at the UK also has an own app, and it's potentially a problem to communicate between the German app and the app from the UK. So there are so many different platforms out there already, which could be really complicated to combine in the end. And
how do you, sorry, please.
Maybe going back to the first thing, to your question before, I think with the GDPR for these contact tracing solutions, it's not a problem at all. I mean, we don't have personal data in there and all that stuff. It's most of the time not the problem. The point is really the ethical thing. Who has the data, where are they located? And if you talk to people in South America, I mean, we had calls with, I would say, at least five countries there. All of them said, okay, wow, the GDPR is something like the gold standard. So I don't really care about the rest. If you are compliant with that, that's fine for us. Send us some more data and all that stuff, but it's not easy to get it through the process of the policymakers. And that's a pain.
Is out of interest, and we have quite limited time, so I'd just like to have quite a high level answer on that. Whoever of the three of you wants to jump in. I talked to a lot of people on this little globe and a lot in the last couple of months, and for me, my understanding is I think data protection and not being willing to give data seems also to be quite a lot of a challenge for Europeans Europeans seem to hate it, especially in the German-speaking countries. And the more educated they are, the more they hate it, I have the feeling. And the younger, less educated areas, people don't seem to care much. How's your understanding there?
I think it's really good to have it in the European values to value data very high and to be really sensitive. But of course, as you mentioned, as a startup enthusiast, you would just like put all the data of together and see what you can get out of that. And this is then also what Chris mentioned on a practical level. This can be difficult then. I mean, of course, our societies and everyone is saying, okay, I appreciate data, but okay, I'm sharing everything what I'm doing on Instagram. You know, it's a little bit of discussion, and also to your initial statement, Gerald, which we are leading, which is not quite true and honest, in my opinion.
Yes.
Definitely. And if I may add something, I think that it's an economically point of view also, because there must be a new data economy. Fun fact, I saw some graphs. There are over 90% of all data out there generated in the last 2 years or last few years. So if you take that into account, there must be a change happening in the policymaker minds, in the minds of the people, and we also have to value data differently. And I think that's very important. That's a challenge. Besides the sustainability challenges we face, I think that's the second biggest topic we have in our generation.
Here comes a nasty question. I want to jump in this because we just have a couple of seconds here. Now, I have the feeling that, and I find this so hilarious that we're having this discussion, and again, I'm totally for data protection. However, I have the feeling a lot of these people who are complaining on this are willing to jump on Instagram or even worse, TikTok afterwards and share their personal data. But before that, which is obviously just, let's be honest, it's kind of quite a lot of bullshit being all that stuff. But sharing anonymized data to save lives seems to be a challenge. Are we lacking the narrative to explain why we need to do this? Is it a question of narrative?
I think this crisis and how we apply the smart use of data to it provides the narrative, because now we can show how to use it in a smart way and what kind of benefit it can give to a society. So I think we should use this in order also to create this narrative and also to emphasize to the people that what we are doing is beneficial for society, but in terms of the personal use of data, people maybe should somehow reconsider.
And I think it's very important to have such a strict regime like the GDPR, so people can get a better understanding to which ends or to what ends the European Union or governments are bound by law to protect the data they are able to collect. And that's also maybe, it's a different point, as it would go too far, but I think we have a very high standard. We have the gold standard, as we just heard it, for data protection in Europe, worldwide. And it also gives us the flexibility to, I think there was just a statement by the European Commission, maybe it was, it's like, on the one hand, we have the legal, the possibility to collect the data and to use it in a beneficial way for the population. And on the other hand, we can be sure that the data is also in a way protected by abuse by governments, for example, of third parties which gain access. I mean, it opens a lot of other questions, and I'm by far not a GDPR fanboy. It's by far from perfect, but actually it's the best we have. So we have to make do with it.
I mean, for me, like, I'm a huge fan of GDPR as well, and I understand the necessity of it. I'm a passionate European, a passionate entrepreneur. However, sometimes I have the feeling we're going into a fight and we're like adhering to the boxing rules, and the other ones in the ring are mixed martial arts and they have a shotgun. That's sometimes my feeling. So yes, I would like to do a nice and fair boxing fight, but the other one has a shotgun, so that kind of sucks in the race. Now, Chris, what's your feeling on that very strong statement from me right now? And then, yeah,
you're right. I think you're completely right. If you talk to people in the US, it's way easier for them to start building something. I mean, if you go into where I'm coming from, the fintech perspective, we don't have a fintech sandbox or something like this, and these are things where I really need data for the beginning and to start building something. And from the startup perspective, I think it's really complicated to comply with all that, especially at the beginning. I don't say we should put it away and do something and put it out to the world, but just leave some space to try things and then see what happens. I think in our perspective in Austria and Germany, most of the time, we are very restrictive. And for innovation, it's definitely not the best thing. But like Gerald said, the GDPR is a good thing itself, definitely.
But
yeah,
just last word, famous last words, like as they say. In my experience, I've talked to some people here and there, and it's like also American companies, for example, are often much better prepared to be compliant to GDPR rules than European companies, because they say, okay, if we want to get into business in Europe, we have to be compliant with the GDPR rules. And on the other hand, in the United States, there's just a different, the legislation works a bit different. It's not that there are no privacy rules at all. There are many privacy rules, but they are just organized in a completely different way. So it's much more complicated to be data protection compliant in the United States if you make big business than it's in Europe. In Europe, 20 plus countries, everything the same, just be compliant to GDPR, everything good. And in the United States, they grab this concept. And if they want to make business in Europe, they have to be compliant. And most of them at least try to do this. So it's not so bad.
Oh, well, we're not saying it's bad. I mean, for me, we have like 90 seconds left, so I'll try and summarize what we've agreed on. And obviously, big topic, short period of time, but however important. I think we could kind of agree, at least to a certain degree, that one cure to Corona is certainly contact tracing. This is a very important element of it. We understand that contact tracing has its challenges because obviously it is personal data. And this is well, it's challenging from a tech point of view, but that's something we can cover easily. It's quite challenging from a legal point of view. But I think the real challenge becomes when it's cultural and also societal. And we can see that parts of society and certain cultures are happy to share their data and others not. And obviously we need to explain this to people. And I think the beauty in Europe is that we don't force our rules and regulations on people and say, this is it, accept it, or here's your punishment, but we try and explain it. I think one of the main challenges for the next weeks and months is going to be how can we use and implement this data quicker and faster in order to keep a lot of our rights and freedoms still upright, freedom of movement and so on. And it's going to be challenged to explain to people why this makes perfect sense. It's also interesting to say that we've obviously set the GDPR gold standard, or the gold standard with GDPR, which has, well, a lot of opportunities and a lot of limitations. So probably could also say, if we make it work here, we can make it anywhere work anywhere in the world, because well, we do have the toughest regulations, but once we do have it, we can roll it out. It's interesting times. At the end of the day, we also understood there's quite a few people that are trying to make this work, but it only works if at least 60% of the population say, yes, I shall give it a shot. And at the end of the day, this is just as challenging as vaccination. Yes, in my opinion, it makes perfect sense. Yes, in my opinion, everyone should do it. No, we can't force it. But yes, we have to explain it to people. So it's interesting times, to say the least. If you're listening in and have different opinions, we're very happy to learn it from you. If you have the same opinions, we're happy to have you join in our narrative. And at the end of the day, I think it's also very, very important, if you meet people who are of different opinion of you, and then you value their opinion, try and have a conversation with them, and in a very nice and charming conversation, yeah, try and show them yours. And maybe you can persuade a couple people that we together reach these 60% to make it work. We're in it to win it together in that sense. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure, albeit rather short. Very much looking forward to having and reaching these 60%, because it would be very nice to be meeting you all in person sometime quite soon. Although, Patrick, I can see you about 15 meters away from here, which is the funny thing. I can hear your voice. I can see you in the distance. Yeah, but that's, again, we're taking it seriously.
I'll be there in a minute, yeah.
Good man, good man. So, gentlemen, obviously with 1.5 meters distance and no handshakes. So that's the way we are. And in that sense, it's been a pleasure, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Stay safe, and see you all on the other side. Thank you very much. Stay safe, and goodbye.
Bye. You're welcome.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it was super interesting to listen to you expert discuss this topic. Thank you very much and have a nice evening. Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Bye.